你这个大骗子！不，希儿，我已经不会再上你的当了，你这个魔王！魔王？这一定是个误会。尊敬的勇者大人，如果我说的有一句是假话，别再装好人了。你从一开始就假扮成冒险者，潜伏在我身边，还故意扮作什么都不懂的新手，让我放松警惕。唉，我可爱的勇者大人，你果然还是个什么都做不到的胆小鬼啊！别着急，勇者大人，时间还有很多，不如让我们来回顾一下这一路的冒险如何？究竟是在哪里出了问题呢？勇者之歌第3幕第3场演出到此结束，谢谢大家对我们旅行剧团的支持，之后有缘再见啦！勇者姐姐加油，一定要打败大魔王，救出你的姐姐！
对，打败大魔王，我最讨厌他了！
对不起啊，我家孩子太入戏了。好了，你们快回家了，别给人家添麻烦。
小孩子真吵啊，耳朵都疼了。其实，如果不是和德尔塔姐排练过好几次，我应该想象不到你刚刚在剧中的那种转变。转变？因为德尔塔姐一直都冷冷的，没想到你还能演出那种天真的冒失鬼的样子。和你对戏的时候，我总觉得，与其说那是表演，倒不如说像是亲身经历过一般。这并非什么难事，表演也只不过是肌肉记忆训练的一种罢了。天也快黑了，收拾下行李，是时候去看看这片森林里究竟有些什么了。就像之前说好的，你来带路。
After Delta's and Zele's performance came to an end, Delta's lone figure reminded Zele of how they first met. One day, after leaving an alchemist shop because of the expensive prices, Zele stopped at a street bench and sighed. She took out a slice of dry bread to eat, and an adventurer's guide with Bronya's notes. On the last page is a message from Bronya that tells her not to worry, as Bronya will defeat the Dark Lord and return, but if for some reason she doesn't make it back, don't go looking for her. After noticing her lack of gold, Zele leaves for the Adventurers Guild to pick up errands, and hopes to become a worthy adventurer like Bronya. At the Adventurers Guild, Zele introduces herself to the guild master. She's from a village called Undine's Tales where she ran a flower shop, but it hasn't been going well, plus her village hasn't been getting visitors these days. As there was no one to bring her any news about Bronya, Zele closed shop and came here in search of her. Zele is adamant on becoming an adventurer, and says she can take less pay. After finally receiving a quest, Zele, with her heart soaring to the sky, leaves to complete it. The quest wasn't particularly hard, but a lot of steps had to be taken. Fortunately, Zele had managed to return with 2 barrels of freshly brewed beer. After making sure everything was ready, she took a deep breath and pushed open the front door of the guild.
救命！
喂，大叔，别给我玩装死这一套，拿出你刚刚骗我的气势来呀！
会长，我回来。
啊？你谁呀你？喂你，别突然晕过去啊！喂！
When Zele awoke, she was greeted by the blue sky instead of the guild's roof. Adventurers Guild on the wall was smeared by paint splash, and the guild master was now hanged upside down. The strange girl tells her this place is actually a tavern that's an Adventurers Guild in name only. When the guild master tried to scam her, it didn't go well, and things got physical. Since she is here, Zele questions her if she wanted to become an adventurer too, but the girl tells her she's only looking for something in the tower that is known as the Dark Castle, and thought someone here could show her the way. Upon hearing this, Zele wants to team up, but the girl denies her request until her stomach growls, and she is handed dry bread. She tells Zele she'll train her and reveals that she goes by the name Delta. Delta also tells her she likes her attitude, and that it beats the 2 brats by a mile. Back to the present, Zele thought she was gonna be training with dumbbells and sandbags, instead it turned out to be acting on a stage. Delta tells her it helps with money and food, but also, the sword fighting on the stage is enough for her. Right now, they're looking for a Jin who, according to the guide, lives at the center of the woods by the clearest spring. Eventually, they manage to find her. The guide says they need to toss a gold coin into the spring to win her favor, and as Zele was about to, Delta stops her and tosses something round and shiny into the water. The Jin waved her hand, and what Delta had dropped was brought to her. After finding out it was 2 arcade token coins stuck together, the Water Djinn is mad. Hey Water Djinn, what's up? Before Water Djinn could finish her sentence, Delta broke her words with a swift slash. The blade missed Water Djinn by a mere inch and parted the water. Standing behind Delta, Zele waited for the Water Djinn to reply, but she remained still and emotionless. Suddenly, she broke form. Delta and Zele were both baffled as they watched the Water Djinn bowing and apologizing non-stop. Zele asks about Bronya, and Water Djinn tells her she must have taken the adventurer's path like every adventurer before her, but according to Zele's guide, the path ends before the woods. That's because Water Djinn didn't draw it on the map. She tells them they need to follow the spring to advance. However, they can't right now because of the deer-headed monsters that guard the entrance to the ruins, and are only active during the day. Delta doubts they'll give her any trouble, but out of consideration for Zele, Delta chooses to wait till nightfall. Later that night, they encounter the Forest Djinn. Even though they waited till night, they matched up against the toughest guy. Perhaps this bubble universe is more fun than Delta had expected. However, during the fight, despite giving the Forest Djinn plenty of opportunities, she never followed up. After being convinced to stop fighting by Water Djinn and Zele, Delta felled a tree, and sat on the trunk. When Zele asks about Bronya, Forest Djinn reveals that her mission was to guide worthy adventurers to the Dark Castle. When Bronya finally passed her test, they became friends, and as her friend, Forest Djinn promised her she'll prevent new adventurers from entering the Dark Castle. After Bronya went to the Dark Castle, the scourge inflicted by the Dark Lord had mostly died down. Still, Bronya never returned. Eventually, the Forest Djinn decided to let them through. Late night that day, near the entrance to Elder Ruins, we learn that any adventurer who wants to enter the Dark Castle must pass the Grand Sage's test here. However, Delta senses that the ruins are unnaturally quiet. They discuss the Grand Sage, whether they are dead or alive, and perhaps, this being part of their trial. Delta then declares they rest here for the night as Zele hadn't gotten any shut-eye for 2 straight days, and Zele mentions how Delta actually cares about her, despite seeming aloof. Zele lay on a small patch of grass using her cloak as a blanket. She then scooched over to make some room for Delta, but Delta declined and volunteered for the night watch. Zele then thanks Delta for the adventure she had always imagined, but Delta tells her to thank her own courage. While sitting on the steels, Delta could feel her fatigue. She was trying to elude sleep, or more precisely, its derivative, dreams, as dreaming is a sign of deep slumber. Closing her eyes, clearing her mind, and opening her eyes 5 minutes later, had been her way of sleeping. This time however, the moment her eyelids fell, a dream of the past occurred. She found herself lying in the snow, trapped in it as if it were quicksand. In a daze, she heard someone calling her real name, and she recalled the past when this endless nightmare began. One afternoon 4 years ago in a special care unit, 3rd Hospital of St. Freya, there was a girl who always spent half an hour reading after her second daily examination. For the past 297 days since she could move, this had been part of her daily routine. Today, when her big sister visited, she had a gift for her. It was a huge book called The Feynman Lectures on Physics.
我看不太懂这里面写的东西，不过索菲亚他们说，现在和我们一样大的孩子都喜欢看这个。笨蛋，这是读大学的时候才会用到的参考书呀！你又被索菲亚他们给骗了。
As requested, the big sister stayed in that ward for a long time, yet she could not finish telling the anecdotes of her latest mission even after the sun had set.
探视时间马上就要结束了，上尉。
It was almost time for the little sister's treatment. The big sister suddenly gripped her hand.
你一定要快点好起来，一定要快点恢复健康才行。战斗的时候，虽然已经过去很久了，但我还是没办法习惯自己一个人。伊莎贝拉、索菲亚、玛利亚，我试着和他们每一个人并肩战斗过，但那种感觉就是不对，怎么配合都不对。所以，你一定要快点好起来才行。没有你的话，
探视时间已经结束了，上尉，你该走了。
In the hallway, the nurse tells the big sister that the experiment inflicted more damage than expected. Her little sister may not be able to fight like before, and the sequelae induced by the experiment may continue to affect her for 3 to 5 years. Suddenly, the girl clutched at the nurse's collar with all her strength.
当时你们不是说无论用什么办法都会治好他的吗？我也参加了那场实验，拿我去研究，去想办法治好他呀！
放开我！
When she realized what she was doing, she let go of the nurse immediately. Though it's not what she wanted, the best they can do is ensure that the little sister can go to school like a regular child. After being told that her little sister may have already heard the news, she teetered back until her back was against the wall, and feebly sat on the ground.
可恶！你这个笨蛋！你这个超级大笨蛋！可恶！
Christmas, 4 years ago, downtown St. Freya.
呼叫指挥所，这里是 Bravo 01，我们正在沿着中央大道向撤离点移动，请求增援。重复一遍，请求增援。可恶，这群混蛋！
还是没有人回答吗？
Her little sister fell down in the thick snow, gasping for air, which should have happened long ago. She was in no condition to go anywhere, let alone keep running. While resisting the monster's attack, she tossed a card to her little sister.
还能跑起来的话就跑，跑不动了的话就用走的，去车库那边，用它搞一辆装甲车，然后开车离开这个鬼地方。
你怎么办？
Her little sister seemed to have a lot to say, but she didn't open her mouth in the end. She clutched the ID card, staggered to her feet, and limped away. After an amount of time, she was now laying in the snow, her sensation gradually fading away, and her body temperature also started to drop. However, she suddenly heard a rush of approaching footsteps. She wanted to yell at her little sister to leave, but blood clogged her throat, and she couldn't make a sound. Eventually, the coldness in the air slowly penetrated into her body, forcing her to close her eyes. When she had finally managed to slightly regain consciousness, she had so many questions, but the answer to the first was revealed right away. She could feel her little sister's warm hand holding hers.
谢谢你，医生，但我是不会后悔的。姐姐应该保护妹妹，但在姐姐需要的时候，妹妹也应该去保护姐姐才对。
我明白了，闭上眼睛吧，我会尽快结束这一切的。
She didn't know what was happening, but she felt her hand being gripped more tightly. The grip on her hand became so tight that her hand even hurt, but the pain was soon replaced by a warm sensation welling up from her palm. The warmth gently enfolded her like how her sister used to embrace her, and she slowly closed her eyes again. If only it was just a nightmare, then her loved one would be by her side when she woke, and gently wipe her tears.